Well, hello, my dear viewers, my dear friends. Welcome back to the channel. And today I bring you, as you can see by the title, Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales. Yes, this is the first time I'll be going outside the topic of manga, and this is the first voyage, I could say, towards new horizons that I mentioned in Friday's Boku no Hero Academy video. And I'm also sure I mentioned it in this Monday's Fairy Tale video, or the 7 Deadly Sins. It was one of those. Now, I'm not an expert reviewer, nor am I an expert commentator. I'm just a guy who's here willing to give his opinion on things. The object of study today is, as I've said, the latest movie on the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which is a franchise that I hold very dear to my heart. Now, the way I'm going to go through this is I'm going to speak a little bit about characters first. First I'm going to do an overhaul on things, a very basic overhaul on things. Then I'll go through characters, events, and scenes. Then I'll do a finishing up overhaul, and then I'll speak of the post-credit scenes last. So, first things first, let's get some things out of the way. Is Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales a good movie? In my opinion, yes. Yes, it is a very good movie. It's well constructed. The action scenes are great. The first scene is amazing, but I'll talk a little bit about it later in the events section. The whole construction of the movie, the whole pace of the movie is very, very fast. Like sometimes I dare say too fast. Like the movie is 2 hours and 9 minutes long. Some number around that. It's 129 minutes long. So I believe it's shorter than At World's End. I believe At World's End keeps the record of being the longest Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I'm not sure about that, but I believe it to be so. There was a need for the movie to be fast-paced as it was. Now, was it a good Pirates of the Caribbean movie? Yes, and maybe a tiny bit no. The comedy was there. The comedy we are used to in a Pirates movie is there. Pirates as in Pirates of the Caribbean, just so I don't always say Pirates of the Caribbean. But the comedy of the Pirates movie, of the Pirates franchise we've been accustomed to, is there. Every scene that's meant to be comedic is it in a very good way. Like, perhaps some exceptions that perhaps were not really necessary. Like, the scenes where the crew with Gibbs and Scrum and Marty and all the other guys, the scenes where they were alone, I believe those scenes could have been taken out. Some of them, at least. The scene where they are kept in the Access, I believe, jail cell, the British ship jail cell, and they are trying to break Scrum's toenail to use as a lockpick. Although it had comic value, I believe in the overall scheme of things, that scene didn't really make much sense. But overall, the movie is good. It's solid. There are some things that I consider continuity errors. Timeline errors. Let's call them that. Timeline errors. Some things like, why is Scrum in Jack Sparrow's crew if he ended on Stranger Tides in Barbossa's crew? Why all of a sudden is Marty back if he was as well in the crew of the Black Pearl by the end of At World's End? His fate was unknown on Stranger Tides because we didn't knew what had happened to the crew of the Pearl. If they had died, if they had been trapped, on the Black Pearl for a long time. I mean, in fact, for the whole duration of On Stranger Tides, and all the way until that man's tale um, publicity, merchandise was coming out, trailers, images, and whatnot. I always considered the crew of the Black Pearl to be trapped inside the Pearl, the only one having saved himself for, obviously, movie purposes was Barbossa. But apparently it wasn't so because it's not Murlog, Murtaugh and Mulroy, those two Navy guys from the first three movies who at the end of at World's End just decide to turn pirates, are now all of a sudden captains of Barbossa's fleet. Those guys, the only reason I see for them to be in the movie is not only to comedic value, if any, but I see them as a replacement for Pintel and Ragetti. Because we had from the very first movie, we had the comic guys. They were Pintel and Ragetti. Like, those guys were always the center of everything stupid and everything joke-worthy. I mean, not all joke-worthy, but if there was stupid mixed in, they were the center of it. So, and to suddenly shift for those characters, it seems, changes that maybe no one else, some people may not notice, some other people might. But anyway, moving on to characters specifically. Now, I'm not going to speak out of all the characters. I'm going to speak out of the main 5 characters: Jack, Hector Barbossa, Carina, Henry, and Salazar, as well as the witch Shansa. I still cannot pronounce that name, but Shansa is a good attempt, and I will keep with that. And also Elizabeth and Will Turner. Now, Jack Sparrow, there are no words that can describe the work that Johnny Depp has been doing, not only with Jack's character, but in other of his characters. But since we are speaking of Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow's character stays true to his every last inch of air. Like, from the very first movie, Jack Sparrow has been a strong, solid character. In this movie, I don't see it as an exception. However, I am of the slight opinion that it could do with some retiring. But I'll speak a little bit more about that later. We've seen Jack in a situation that we've never seen him before. Sure, we've seen him in Port Royal at the very first movie, like looking for, without a crew, without a ship. But I don't believe he was that bad as he is now. He loses the remainder of his crew. He has a dying ship, which actually manages to float even. That was a very fun scene as well. But yes, and when he decides to give away his compass, which, again, that compass is a very mixed up backstory. But we'll speak about that in a bit. He brings out his old and most powerful enemy so far. I mean, I say powerful, Davy Jones had a giant octopus. Well, his most feared enemy. I think we can say that in the movie's lore, Salazar was Jack Sparrow's first nemesis, so to say. There are other sources of lore, there's comics. I'm not sure if there are comics, but I know there's some books that were written that detail a lot more stories about Jack in his younger days. But then again, if those are considered canon or not is always the problem with this sort of media. But for movies purposes, we'll consider Salazar Jack's first nemesis. And I really, really, really enjoyed to see not really Jack's flashback, but Salazar's flashback on regarding the situation that Jack Sparrow defeated. Also, the origin of the name Sparrow It was very, very, very well made. Jack the Sparrow, which later came to be known as only Jack Sparrow. Very, very interesting. And we see that in his younger days, Jack had already that sass and that banter that we know him to have. Overall, I just really, really enjoyed Jack's character, but much like the final scene of the movie, pre-credits, I think it's time to let him sail towards the horizon. But again, I'll speak about the possibility of a future Pirates movie in the end. Let's move on to Hector Barbosa. Now, during the promotional material, trailers, images, and whatnot, one thing that worried me about Barbosa was his outfit. Because if you remember at the end of Stranger Tides, he went back to his old pirate outfit, the one we've known him for in the original trilogy. And I was like, heck yes, next pirate movie, the good old Barbosa is back. But during the promotional material, he started showing these almost navy-like clothes, admiral-like clothes. And I was like, are they going to put him back in the navy? It makes no sense. And then he had his wig back and everything. And I was severely worried. Luckily, when the film came out, I discovered at least, that he was no part of the Navy, but he was an admiral of his own pirate fleet thanks to the power of the Sword of Triton he took from Blackbeard 5 years ago. In the movie's continuity, 5 years have passed since the events on Stranger Tides. Sadly, the character of Hector Barbosa had to leave us in this movie, and I take this as a sign that this is really supposed to be the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and I'm okay with that. Hector Barbosa is a very good character. I always enjoyed him throughout the movies. The fact that he appeared in the second movie was a surprise to me, which I didn't came to regret, actually, because I really like the duality between Jack and Hector. They were friends, but then they were enemies, but they always had that interaction. They're neither friend nor foe. They're just two clashing entities that sometimes look like they are friends and allies who trust one another, but then at another time they are dueling it out, swords to each other's necks, and just cursing each other on, it makes for really good character between these two. We also discover, and moving on to the next character, Karina Smith. We also discover that Miss Karina Smith, a new character in this movie, is Hector Barbosa's child. Now, this is another of those situations I thought it was introduced way, way too fast, and it did not benefit from the fact that it was just shown in the last quarter of the movie. We spend almost the whole movie with Karina. Ever she's there from nearly the beginning. In the first opening scene, Jack meets with her even. So we see her from the very beginning of the movie. We see Hector Barbosa at the beginning of the second quarter of the movie. And then all of a sudden, in the last quarter, when they are on the Black Pearl already, Barbosa suddenly realizes, oh wait, that's the diary I stole all those years ago, but she has it, so this means she's my daughter. And then suddenly when he and Jack talk about it, we suddenly get the realization that she's indeed his daughter. At first I thought when he recognized that diary, I thought, wait, I know who this diary is from. I know the guy who's her father. And when Jack started speaking with him about that, I thought, oh, it's a mutual acquaintance. Maybe a pirate they all knew back in the day. Maybe at that point I still thought that could be a new Pirates movie. Maybe in the next Pirates movie we'll get to see who Karina's father is. But In that very same scene, we discover that it ain't so the case. I have mixed feelings about Karina's character. On one hand, I enjoyed it a lot. Her interactions with Henry are simple, predictable, teenish, like in relation, like it's a relation you would expect from a modern teen drama. She's sassy, she has banter. He's also a little bit sassy, although a little bit more on the soft side. And their relation is one of exchanging banter with one another. And at the end, their interaction in the end is actually quite hilarious. He goes for a kiss, she slaps him, just, oh, just want to make sure it's really you and not being possessed by a ghost. On the other hand, I think her participation is a little toned out to comedic relief sometimes. The whole astroneer thing, the whole astronomers things, the pirate doesn't even know, the crew doesn't even know what that is. And they say, oh yeah, she works with donkeys. And they keep the whole scene just saying, hey, but where's your donkey? Despite the fact that she explains them that she has nothing to do with donkeys. I thought that scene was a little bit exaggerated in my opinion. Moving on to Henry Turner. I also have mixed feelings about Henry Turner because the thing with Karina and Henry is they are meant to be the new Will and Elizabeth. But let's face it, nothing can compare to the original pair. Like, Will and Elizabeth had that relationship that was built over 3 movies. They met one another in the first movie. They got closer together in the first movie. On the second movie, it seemed that something was driving them apart ever since their failed marriage. I mean, no, actually no. They kept closer despite the failure of their marriage. But in the end of the second movie, after Will saw Elizabeth kissing Jack in order to lock him in the Pearl, a wedge started driving between them. There was time to develop the relation. And in the third movie, that wedge seemed bigger and bigger by the moment. But then in the end, they got past that and they got married in the ship, which is still to this date one of my favorite scenes in the entire Pirates franchise, is Will and Elizabeth's marriage. So the problem with Karina and Henry is that they don't have time for that. They didn't have their whole affair had to be done in one single movie. I mean, one can argue that yes, Will and Elizabeth were already in love with one another by the end of the movie. It's true. But there was nothing assumed. Like in the end of the movie, Norrington goes like, oh, so this is the path you choose, this is the man you choose. And she goes like, yes, I choose him because I love him the most. But there was still time to develop a sort of a relation. But then again, if this is, as I believe to be the last Pirates movie, Henry and Karina just stay on the limbo as a one-shot pair, much like the priest and the mermaid were on Stranger Tides. Then again, Karina and Henry are still a better pair than the priest and the mermaid. God, that was... It's no surprise that On Stranger Tides is my least favorite movie of the whole franchise. Now, let's go to the big guy, Captain Salazar. I loved Captain Salazar. Javier Bardem on this character was just spot on. It fit him like a glove, much like Bill Nighy was for Davy Jones, much like every actor is fit for the characters they portrayed. Javier Bardem on Captain Salazar's skin was flawless. The accent he brought to the way he said Sparrow, it's just the little nitpicks. Yeah, right at the beginning, we've seen this was the very first trailer back in a year ago or something, when we saw Salazar interacting with Henry, when he would go like, "Oh, would you relay this message for him?" Please, just like the man is a total villain, an undead Spanish captain, and the guy just has the balls to ask police for a message to be delivered to a cabin boy. Like, amazing. Still, all his interactions, him with Jack, him with Barbosa, like him threatening the scene where he just beats his sword in like a rhythm, in a rhythm, and these crew members just slaughtered Barbosa's crew. That was awesome. But sadly, there's one thing that buggered me about Salazar. Not necessarily about him, but the whole thing is about the movie, which I'll speak in the events part. Now, Sancho, I just, this character is the strongest link we have to a possible sequel. This and the post-credit scenes is actually the closest link we have to a possible sequel, because in this movie she didn't do jack shit. Like, she appeared, we found out that Barbosa had freed her some way. She got the compass for him. In the scene that Jack got away from the compass, we saw a mouse near it, and then we discovered that she was the one controlling the mouse who brought her the compass. Like, she's a bold version, she's a bold Hispanic version of Tia Dalma. Basically, Tia Dalma had crabs, Sancha has rats. So, and then again, unless there is indeed a sequel to Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, on Dead Mountain No Tales, or sorry, unless there's a sequel for that, Sancha's character was really just wasted. She was well portrayed, like her actress really did a good job, but in the overall scheme of things, not so much. The character just really felt a little bit out of place. It felt a character introduced just to give Barbosa the compass and to help the British Navy discover the location of the pirates. That's all. Like, there was nothing else. So, really, a wasted character in my opinion. But then again, as much as she was a wasted character on this movie, she's one of the strongest links we have to a possible sequel, especially taking in consideration the post-credit scene, which I'll speak not right away, but right after the events section. I won't be delaying too much in this scene, in this part, because there's really no way to. You guys have watched the movie, you guys probably know everything I'm talking about. I'm just going to talk about some moments that I thought were cool. First, the opening scene with Henry and his father, Will Turner, in The Flying Dutchman. One thing that really caught my attention right at the beginning was at the end of World's End. Of course, as we all know, Will Turner became the captain of the Flying Dutchman. And I was like, okay, the crew of the Flying Dutchman will go back to their original purpose, even if they get somewhat dirty in the face and whatnot. It's expected, but they'll go to their original purpose, and they'll be sort of good guys, because after all, Will kind of saved them from a curse that turned them into horrible monsters, and he gave them purpose again. In fact, Will's father, Bootstrap Bill Turner, was on the ship, so why the heck was the Dutchman crew all crazy like? I mean, there had been a little bit more than 10 years, like, because that's the thing with continuity. At the post-credit scene of At World's End happened 10 years past the the events of At World's End. So the child of Will and Elizabeth had 10 years. Henry Turner had 10 years then. But then this new scene supposedly takes place 8 years after his father's curse, because we see the annotation on the lighthouse or in Henry's quarters, where we see a little parchment with father's curse and the years crossed. And I believe they were on the 9th year. So was it 9 years after the original visit? Because that boy didn't look like he had 19 years old. If anything, it looked like that little guy had not even close to 10 years old. And if that's so, why is Will that way if in the post-credit scene of At World's End he was like a normal guy? No barnacles, no dirty. I mean, he could have prompted himself for Elizabeth. Like, imagine him appearing in front of her, all barnacle beard and everything. But anyway, then there's the bank scene. I thought that was hilarious in comparison with with Jack's first appearance in The Curse of the Black Pearl. Like they opening the vault. At first I thought the vault is totally empty. But when they opened the vault, I thought this is so much better. Jack Sparrow sleeping inside of the vault with the governor's wife. That was amazing. I thought the whole thing of horses pulling the bank a little exaggerated. I mean, there's no way horses could pull a building like that. I mean, I think there's no way. I know horses are powerful animals, but then again, please, if you are at all a Norse expert, please do let me know. Could horses pull a building like that in real life? Even if it's almost entirely made out of wood, there's still the safe who weighs a ton. So I'm a little confused about that scene. Then there was the whole escape, the trading of the compass for a bottle of rum. I thought that scene was not really too far-fetched, but also could have played in a different way. Like, it seems almost too convenient that Jack would just throw the compass away, thus betraying it and thus releasing the Silent Mary crew of Salazar and his goons out of the Devil's Triangle. I loved the execution scene. Jack like going, oh, I want the guillotine. It sounds French. I love the French. The old joke from the first movie, the French invented mayonnaise. It's back. That joke, it's kind of getting old now in terms of age. But it's still funny. Come on. I've spoken about the scene with Barbossa and Sancho, and Barbossa and Murtaugh and Merloy, which I still am trying to figure out. But the movie overall just paces well and fast. But now I want to talk specifically about the ending. The whole thing from the point they get to Poseidon's Island, or not really Poseidon's Island, but the island where the Trident of Poseidon is located. I enjoyed the aesthetic of the island. It was really cool. At first I thought the island was covered with treasure, but it appeared to be just a glimmering sort of island. But then the scene with the Trident. The fact that the simple destruction of the Trident, an ancient artifact wielded by a sea god, which already should count as nearly indestructible, but we'll go to that in a minute. The sheer destruction of the Trident of Poseidon to break all the curses, that was a far-fetched move. Like, there was no indication up until that point that the destruction of the Trident was even possible or was even needed, for that matter. They just discovered it at that moment, destroyed the Trident, and boom goes the dynamite. Like, all the curses are conveniently broken, and Salazar and his crew go back to being humans again. Which is odd, because some of his men were really, really mistreated. Like, one of his men didn't even have legs anymore. One of his men was just legs, part of his torso and chest, like half face. I don't even remember if he had a neck. Like, some of his men were really ill-treated. So, and then there's of course the whole anchor scene where Karina finally realizes that Barbosa is her father and his imminent sacrifice, which my girlfriend claims that he could have survived that wave, because in the moment he clashes with the water, we see him fall. Salazar falls first underwater, and then goes Barbosa. And he falls in the water almost as the waves are closing in. She claims he could have survived. I doubt it, and honestly I wouldn't want it to, because it would make his death pointless, and you guys know how I hate pointless deaths in media. Yes, Fairy Tale, I'm looking at you. Sorry, my throat is parched already. And then there's the whole ending scene with Will coming happily home and Elizabeth appearing for her 5 minutes of fame on Pirates of the Caribbean. They must have paid her a fortune to go back. And boom goes the dynamite. Will and Elizabeth are back together. Henry and Karina get together. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. And we see Jack going on towards the horizon, as I believe he should, because I believe the Pirates movie shouldn't come back. Another thing that also bugged me, allowed me to keep in the event section a little bit more, was the fact, why couldn't Barbosa use the power of the Sword of the Triton a little more efficiently? Like, we know that Salazar's Salazar's crew were made of ghosts, but he could have done something with their ship to, like, I don't know, force them into land. Because if land was their problem, Barbosa could have used the Sword of Triton on the Silent Mary and just... But then again, the Silent Mary was pretty broken up, so that might be it. And that would be a too easy of an explanation. So, anyway, and I would like to know what happened to the Queen Anne's Revenge. Because we don't see what happens to the Queen Anne's Revenge. And I doubt we will ever see. Now, to the meet and greet of the movie. The thing I hated the most, and I say this with total conviction, the thing that worries me the most is that post-ending, the post-credit scene. Like, I usually love post-credit scenes. In the Marvel movies, I love post-credit scenes. In the other Pirates movies, I love the post-credit scenes. But this time around, it got me very, very worried. If you haven't watched the post-credit scene, or if you have, basically what happens is Will and Elizabeth are sleeping in their room in a stormy night. Suddenly, the doorway to their room opens, and we see a familiar figure, that of Davy Jones. He goes towards the bed, and just when he steps right near the bed, Will wakes up. We see Davy Jones' pincer in the air, and then all of a sudden Will wakes up. Believing it was all a dream, he goes back to sleep. But then the camera pans down, and we see a little puddle of water with some barnacles on the floor, stating that possibly Davy Jones is back. Remember when I said Sancha? Shansa. The witch. Remember when I said that the witch was the strongest link and the post-credit scene towards a new movie? I wasn't joking. If they actually bring Davy Jones back, an explanation could be that Sansa could possibly be the one responsible for it. She could even be a pagan goddess, much like Calypso was in the first trilogy. Again, that would be a recycle of ideas and concepts, but it is possible. It is very, very possible that that could be it. Overall, and let's close this up because this video is 36 minutes long already. I enjoyed the movie a lot. It's not my favorite Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I would probably place it either at second or fourth place. I know it's a heck of a change, but it's between him and That Man's Chest. For me, my order is at first place is at World's End. At World's End is my favorite Pirates movie. At second is either Dead Man Tell No Tales or Dead Man's Chest. At third is The Curse of the Black Pearl. At fourth, the same thing with the second place. And at fifth is On Stranger Tides. So I would say that this movie, if I had to give it a rating, I would say it is a 6 out of 10. I would say 6 out of 10. It's not great. It's not a marvel of Hollywood or anything, but it's good. The characters are solid, even though they only had one movie to develop. They are solid. Salazar was a solid villain. I loved every bit of his performance, or Javier Bardem's performance, and every little bit of Salazar's character. I loved it. The setting, the music is everything we have been accustomed to in a Pirates movie. And surprisingly, it was the first Pirates movie not to be recorded in the Caribbean era. Probably you guys knew that. But if you didn't, here's another fun fact thrown in the middle. But anyways, there you have it, my opinion, my noobish opinion on Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales. I sure as hope you guys have enjoyed this opinion of mine. If you guys have enjoyed this style of video, please do let me know. Would you like to see the channel go further into other themes besides manga? I have plans for it. I might do a separate video on that. I might start working on that. But please do let me know in the first instance. Do you want to see that? Do you want to see the channel expand its horizons and go into other themes, games, movies, and keep the manga stuff, but just expand our array of possibilities? Please do let me know all of that and much more, whatever you want. Please do give your opinions on the movies in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Did you even went to see it? And if you haven't, you probably are not watching this video then. But my dear friends, my dear viewers, this video is long enough already, and I hope to see you guys' opinions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video, which is probably tomorrow, the One Piece chapter live reaction. And bye bye.